right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the lab. Sitting with you, as always, is Brandon Wierig, Alex Trotter, and I'm Lou Follenkamp. This is the 33rd episode of the lab today. And sitting with us, we have TJ from Yale University.
How's it going, guys? Thanks for having me.
TJ, so you were just talking to us a little bit about the smog you guys have been dealing with. How's everything been going up east?
It's getting better. Canada seems to be putting itself out, so a little less smoke and hopefully back to normal running outdoors up here soon.
Oh man, that just sounds miserable. I can't believe that. So just to kind of lead off the questions here, TJ, tell us a little bit about why you wanted to get into sport performance and why you wanted to get into the position that you are today.
I'll try to keep it quick because it was a bit of a longer road to get here, but I actually got my undergraduate degree in nursing. When I was coming out of high school, I didn't have a whole lot of direction. I picked college because I wanted to go play a sport there for the money, and my entire family was in the medical field, and I did better with human anatomy and physiology, and thought I'd go be a nurse anesthetist. And after doing nursing for a few years, realized I didn't want to keep pursuing that route. And someone I went to high school with actually told me about a master's in exercise science. So I went back and got that. And getting my master's, I had a class in strength and conditioning and just kind of pretty much fell in love with it. At the time, I was training with just people from my gym and friends that I knew. And I ended up, while I was in school, competing in a powerlifting meet. But I've trained with people who've like gone and done powerlifting at the Arnold or have like won the Arnold now. So I kind of was mixed into that culture, and loved it. So when I found that there was a class on strength and conditioning, I was like, wait, I can get paid to do this. So I was like, yeah, this is absolutely the route that I want to go. And I've always been involved in athletics, and that it just made total sense for me. After I graduated, I got to teach at the school that I was at, the undergrad program, for a couple semesters when one of the teachers took off. And while I was there teaching, the former director at Yale came by and was asking for interns and help, and I got involved at Yale that way. So I've only ever been here, but been here for 6 years, and pretty much been pretty lucky. Every year or two, the next step kind of opened up for me here. So I've been able to stay here and take different roles in different positions since 2017.
So what is your current role right now at Yale?
Now I'm actually the director of the department. If I remember my title correctly, it's director of performance and student athlete innovation.
Okay.
That part kind of comes with every year I work with our engineering department on different projects, different things to try to give their freshmen a problem that we're dealing with in the weight room and see if they can come up with any devices. And it seems like almost every other year they're actually able to make something that actually could be, very useful and marketable down the line. And, again, that's the beauty of being at Yale. Their freshmen take these projects here, and then in, 10 years, I might see it actually be a device on the market for sale and in almost every weight room. So pretty cool to get to do that.
Hey, you have like basically your own R&D department right there at Yale.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's just wild that they're all 18 and 19 years old.
That's pretty sick.
Yeah, I talk to them and I could not feel dumber sometimes, but then they make me feel better when they come in the weight room and they see us like, just take the rack apart and they're like, oh wow, that works like that. That's awesome. I'm like, all right, that makes me feel better.
Oh man. So what, like, I guess just if you have any examples of what you guys have kind of come up with, like in the past.
So the previous director, when I got here, the first project that I remember that stuck with me was they were trying to make a different type of isometric training device, something a bit more like upper body focus.
Mm-hmm.
And they took a crane handle and attached it to a box that could read force outputs, and if you put it into a laptop, you could actually watch the over time the force that you were putting into the handle to do the isometric training. And
Mm-hmm.
I ended up actually using it with our sailing kids because we have sailing here at Yale, and like their competition, when it's heavy wind, they actually have to isometrically hold a position pretty well to control the wind to do it. So
Mhm.
the kids that were doing that loved it. And then another one that they had come up with was a rep counter box. So instead of the old school, like just put your fist out, hopefully your chest hits the fist to do like push up counters. There's actually like a squat box that we call it, and you can set the different heights, and it'll just beep and tell you when you actually hit the depth to make sure that you're getting consistent range of motion every time. Or in rehab, we limit range of motion if people were coming back from something with meniscus or something and couldn't go too low or whatever. So we've had some pretty cool toys that they've been able to make, and we've actually used in training here. And um, still waiting to see, like the squat box is one that they've actually put out there for other people to get. So it's pretty
That,
cool to work with it that way.
hey, that's sick. Where would you be able to find that squat box?
I can put you in touch with the people from the engineering department. I think that's the easiest way to do it, because right now they've made like a limited amount of them. I think around like 500, but
Okay.
it's pretty easy for them to make more. So yeah, I know. Actually, we kind of collaborate with someone who's also CSCS and a physical therapist, and I think he's taken it to his rehab sports performance facility and used it with kids coming back from injury to help progress them through everything they need to. So been helpful in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I was going to say that definitely sounds like something I would probably start using quite a bit of.
Yeah, it's great because it's not difficult. That's the best part about working with them. We'll joke with them and be like, we're a dumb strength coach. Make it simple and not hard to use, so that I could just basically turn it on and push two buttons and it's ready to roll. And every time we tell them that, they're able to make it pretty simple, because they could definitely make it way more complex if they wanted to.
That's pretty sweet, dude. I'm definitely gonna have to look into that more. That'd be kind of nice with the kids that are like ACL patients, meniscus patients. That would be fantastic. So
Yeah,
kind of building off the research and like the information that you get and the data that you collect. In your position, how have you gone about taking the all of the wonderful tools that you guys have and utilizing that to kind of benefit your athletes?
it's definitely a collaborative effort from the whole department, and it's something we're trying to really streamline. I can easily think of numerous companies that, like, I just get like the email promos out there of like, oh, we have this great database that pulls everything together from all the different technology that's out there. But what I like is that I have someone on my staff who's just phenomenal with like Excel and Google Sheets. So Coach Alex Larson here, he can pretty much take anything that is available in Excel and or Google Sheets really, and turn all the numbers into pictures and representations and make it really easy for us to just look at things that way. And um, that's really what we do. We build our own database, and then the big thing is we really emphasize going back and looking at it. Like, let's look at this time this year compared to this time last year. Did we get better? Are we getting exponentially better, or is it 1% better and it's not really that different? It was basically the same. So um, just making sure that we track and store everything is really the biggest thing that we do. And my Google Drive definitely takes a while to load because there's so much information in it. But we, I couldn't imagine trying to do it and do my job the best if I didn't do it that way. So that's definitely the biggest way that we do it.
Mhm.
And again, we'll utilize the platforms of some companies. So that obviously helps using digital based tools. But when we pull it all together on our end, we do a lot of the manual work on our own, and it takes time. But that front end investment definitely pays off on the back end.
Makes sense. When you guys have all of the data that you guys are collecting, you ever feel like you get kind of lost or maybe overwhelmed by the numbers that you guys have? Because if you have that much information, how do you guys go about like I guess is it like a group effort, pinpointing what's the essential, what's not, and then kind of tossing out the non-essential and implementing the good?
We definitely, I would say there's been times we've been lost for sure. So I'd be lying if we've been smooth sailing every time. But we make it a group discussion and group effort, and then at the end of the day, we kind of come back to it, and we try to make things really, really simple and just almost work backwards. It's sometimes a lot easier to work backwards for us. So we'll just see like, who is productive for us, like who is on the field, who, contributed, who was all Ivy, all American,
Mhm.
whatever. We'll kind of look at those kids and start pulling the information that they have and just see, okay, what did they have in common? Like, because everyone agrees being strong is great, but I can go across, my entire football team and probably 95% of my kids, I'm happy with their strength. And so their, squat strength relative to their size probably isn't the ultimate predictor, but it's a baseline number that we know we need to have and still push for anyway. So, if we don't get that, we can't get to, whatever metric ends up being, hey, like this number, the kids who hit this threshold, they end up being productive on the field. So we we feel pretty confident in what we've been able to look at in terms of what actually helps lead to production, but we'd make sure that we don't lose that foresight of what did you do to get to the point that you could actually get there. Like we don't just train for that particular variable, really.
Makes sense. So how do you go about like, I guess, so I mean, like obviously like a sample size of one, if you have something that works for one person, but it doesn't necessarily work for the rest of the group, how have you guys been going about? And like, because if it does work for that person, you keep them going. How have you guys kind of circled back and modified whatever you guys need to in the training programs?
The thing that makes it easy is team builder, honestly. Like I can't not name drop them. I don't know how I would do my job as effective as I did if I didn't have that, because it's just so convenient to be able to have a platform that saves everything for you. So if it worked for them, you know what worked, and you can say this worked really well. Be able to go back and look at it, and if it makes sense, use it again. And if it makes sense for that one person, you can use it for that one person, and then make the bigger adjustments for everybody else. And it's not difficult because it gives you, the ability to do that. It adds time for sure, but not as much time if I was trying to do it all on my own in like an Excel sheet or by hand, or again, kind of what I said before, not tracking. So, because yeah, you're right. There's some stuff that definitely sticks out that is better for others. So that's honestly what we try to do. We try to like find what works for that individual and keep sticking to it. Because for the majority of the kids, like the general structure, probably like the 80-20 rule, 80% of what we're thinking of doing will work for them. You maybe got to switch up 20% for that one individual, and every individual's 20% is going to be a little bit different. Some of it'll be the same, but once we start kind of getting those molds, it's not hard, because then I can think, oh, well, this wide receiver really reminds me of this running back. So even though they're different positions, like they're responding to workouts the same, I can go pull from that running back and try out what I did with him and, make it work that way.
I was just curious because I know sometimes people kind of get lost in the weeds with the numbers and they think, okay, if it doesn't work for everybody, it's not necessarily good. But then I think, having that individualization is also important. So what I'm going to do here, TJ, is I'm going to open the floor here to Alex and Brandon, and I'll let you field a few questions from them.
Sounds good.
I want to dive into the topic you sent with the KPIs and like the aerobic capacity and anaerobic capacity, and kind of explain that a little bit. Then I'll start coming up with questions from there.
That's good. Yeah, so it kind of ties into what we were just talking about, is like, trying to figure out what really matters and what really leads to the production on the field, right? And as everybody knows, like everybody's got their kind of genetic limitations, and they also have their genetic ceilings, and trying sometimes to push for more in an area that you think is related, if all the information doesn't really point to that variable leading to significantly better production on the field, sometimes it makes sense to go look for something else. But a big part of that is like really understanding, like, what it is. So I'm pretty fortunate. I get to work with my coaches a lot, and we're on the same page of what kind of athlete we're really trying to look to bring in. So, they look for that in the recruiting process. And then on our end, we try to maximize getting to, basically the way we'll look at it is like, are we making our room better, or are we below the average of our room? And if we're below the average, that's not great. We gotta up the room, and whether it's through the training or through bringing in different kids, it's that way. But kind of finding out those key performance indicators. It really, like I said, it all comes back to stat production. Like I can have some kids test absolutely phenomenally, but if they can't get on the field, it doesn't really matter if they're absolutely great athletes. So we look at, if it's my lacrosse attackman, we'll look at goals, points, stuff like that. We go backwards we'll go backwards from the, like, who's getting all American honors, who's getting all Ivy recognition, and we'll look at like who are our most productive kids, and then what do they have in common, and how do we get there. So that's one of the big ones. And the touching on like aerobic and anaerobic capacity, like a big fight or struggle that I think a lot of strength coaches, not even just myself, have, is just it's very easy to blame fitness when you're not having success. And I think a lot of times, like, defining that fitness is tough for coaches. Like, what do you mean fitness? Like, what is the issue that they're having? Are they not running max effort? Is their max effort just not very good? So it looks like, they're not good. Like, you can have a kid who looks like they're in shape, but if they can't run by anybody, it doesn't really matter that they're in shape. Every sport is an element of power. Power is force times distance divided by time. So even cross country and long distance track, like, every sport is an element of power. It's just, what is the type of power that you need for your sport? And, how can you maximize it with the training that you're doing? So that's kind of the conversation that I have a lot with coaches, and use that to talk more so about what is it that you see on the field that we need to address. And sometimes it's not even it's almost more like what pitchers have to deal with in a lot of sports. Your max effort is really, really good, but baseball knows that you're probably not putting your starting pitcher out 2-3 games in a row. They don't do that. Mm-hmm. A lot of other sports, by the nature of it, like lacrosse, for example, our big tournaments, it's, you got a game Friday or Saturday, and then you got Saturday or Sunday off, and the next game's Monday. Like, that's not the normal schedule, but the biggest games happen that way. So trying to have kids being able to be prepared to deal with that is a little different than just having them prepared for their normal season.
You do that across all sports at Yale?
Across all of the sports that want to look into it that way. And I'd say that's kind of the benefit here. There's every place is like that, right? Like, some coaches really, really love the numbers in science, and other coaches are just like, I've played and done it this way, so I feel better and comfortable doing it this way. And on our end, I've taken some of the stuff that other coaches have done and looked at it and found ways to make it fit too. So it's not necessarily that there's like one absolute like end all be all. We just try to make it all work together. Does
that come from like the strength coach of that team, or from the actual like position coach of that team? A little bit of both?
Yeah, definitely both. Definitely collaborative. If there's something that any of the assistants that I have in the department struggle with, I try to help them out so that we can do the highest that we can with everybody. So if it's something new that they haven't done, that doesn't hold it off. So I'd say a big driver is really what the head coach ends up wanting to do with a lot of the information. We offer it, we're willing, and that's probably like the best advice I can give to any collegiate strength coach is always be willing to do as much as you can. But someone told me that stuck with me. Like, I can't want it more than the athletes. I can't want it more than the head coach. We are, at the end of the day, like the support staff. So
you ever find like there's like certain indicators that kind of branch across all the sports? Like for us, I think like pull-ups and Nordics have like kind of transitioned across all sports. If I got two athletes, I can do those two exercises well. They tend to be one of the top guys either in the gym or in their sport.
I'd I'd say it's honestly probably similar to what you're saying there is really like your relative strength, just like how strong you are compared to your size is ultimately one of the biggest things I've noticed. Because generally, if you are strong for your size, they're probably pretty strong in most aspects. Like they may not be the top, 2 or 3 total number and something, but when you break it down relatively, they're probably top 5 in a lot of different areas. So I don't want to beat the dead horse with it, but I struggle to find linemen that are cracking like our top 10 if they're 300 pounds but can't do a chin up at 300 pounds. So that it's not, again, like I said before, it's not necessarily that the chin up is the end all be all perfect metric, but it's the fact that they're strong enough to move their own body weight at that size. That's probably a better 300 pounds than
soft 300 pounds.
Exactly. That's a better way to put it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then what's like your best, like, I mean, you got all these numbers, you got all these different teams. Like, what's kind of your like buy-in thing for coaches to kind of click to? Is there like a certain athlete that maybe has done it and then saw the results? Or, I mean, it's a lot of numbers, a lot of different exercises. Like, what's that buy-in factor?
I'd say the buy-in factor has to be honestly, really just getting the results from it. Like at the end of the day, like all this information can sound good, but it can't be that you like come up with this great plan and you're going to try to put all this stuff in place. And then if you don't actually do something right and it doesn't work, then they're not going to believe it. So like you got to actually use this information to make an actual sound, effective plan and produce what you're going to say you produce. Which also kind of goes back to the point that you were saying, like, I will tell a coach I'm going to improve one thing. I will not tell them I'm going to improve 3, 4, 5 things at a time. I'll be like, if these other 3 or 4 things happen, awesome. But if you're telling me that I need to get faster, we're going to get faster. And we'll talk about what faster is. Is it, faster first step? Is it faster top speed? Whatever it is, you tell me which one it is that you need. I'll get that done. And this is what I think may happen along the way. But, if it doesn't, as long as we got faster, we agree that we're good. And I'm very big on making sure that like that's the understanding coming out of any of my meetings is knowing what it is that I actually am trying to achieve. And that way, if I do it, it's like, well, we got it. And obviously what we end up focusing on will depend on time of year, all that stuff. So it changes throughout the year. I'm not ever looking at just like one big thing.
Now, is there a certain like team or group that you've had a hard time kind of connecting with? Like for a while, it's like for us, like our cross country kids think that they're going to run, they're going to get slow. But now we got like 4 or 5 of the top runners in the state, or maybe basketball players and their shot getting messed up, or golf swings or thing like that.
Yeah, I'd say the one that's always a consistent fight, and I don't know if it'll ever go away in college athletics, is the kids who want to be fast in whatever element it is. They always are worried that weight training will make them slow. So I wouldn't even say there's a team or a sport or anything in particular. I think it's across the board. The kids that want to be fast want to work, but they're nervous about ever being slower at some point in time instead of trying to focus on peaking. So that's definitely the group that I constantly see that I have to have a conversation with. Like I can think of a wide receiver here right now that it took the entire freshman year to get him to buy into weight training and understand that weight training will not make him slower. It will make him faster. And he tested off the charts and was one of the best all-around athletes that we had this year. And like he came up to me at the end of their spring football season and was like, I felt great. You were right. This works. I wish I could just say that I'm a genius. It's just like I've learned this. It's been out there. I'm not saying earth-shattering here.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you. Appreciate the acknowledgement.
Finally. Well, no, I appreciate you taking at least like 5 of the questions I had. Which we're on the same wavelength here. So now I got
I got one more real quick.
No, please go ahead. I'm sure I was thinking of it.
Kind of like a job stability standpoint. Like since you're kind of more of the, wouldn't say like necessarily like the head guy
A
or like
manager role.
yeah. Like, would you say that you're like for like people like looking to pursue maybe college athlete or college strength coaches, like maybe your job stability versus maybe like the head strength of the football team, for instance?
Yep. So here I'm actually head for football team too.
Damn, look at you.
And it's busy.
Yeah.
But I actually was just having this conversation with one of our interns, and I definitely think like you just kind of got to look at the levels, and with the fame and glory is going to come less stability, and I think there are plenty of Division One like head football strength and conditioning coaches out there, positions out there that are stable. It's just how competitive, what is competitive for them, and what level are you competitive at? Like, I'd say for the most part, fairly stable here. Like we want to do well and be successful. So, if we go 3-10, 5 years in a row, I'm sure that I'd be a little nervous, but, we've, in the past, like 5-6 years, we've had a good season, down season, good season, down season. So there's always that pressure for sure. But, I don't necessarily think that there's a lot of schools at the FCS level that it's necessarily if the head coach leaves or is asked to leave, to put it nicely. I don't necessarily think the head strength and conditioning coach is always out the door with them, especially at the FCS level. But I think the big thing I'd tell people to ask is just to ask that kind of like, what is the expectation of like what is competitive for us here? Because for us, like, just I know between me and the coach that I work with, like, we want to just kind of like continuously try to be dominant. We don't really want to, and by dominant, that doesn't necessarily mean win a championship every single year, but we don't ever want to be a year where it's just like, oh yeah, Yale's like an automatic win. So there's kind of that thought process behind what we do, and how we get to that point. If we do all those other little things right, it should lead to a good result at the end of the year. And so like the different teams that I work with that way, I also have field hockey here. Like our level of success, because of just where we've been for the last few years, it's totally different. Like a change for them this year is that we have the Ivy League tournament. So I know a goal for us is that we make the tournament. That if we do that, won't be the most successful year probably, but that's going to be looked at as like, all right, we achieved our goal of getting there. So that I know it's a totally different sport, and probably not many people are getting fired if the field hockey team doesn't make their tournament. But that, like, I just feel like that's an easier lens to kind of explain like everything on my end, on how I look at it, what I tell the kids that we have as interns to ask and think about when they're looking places.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of a good segment, because I had a question about your interns. So when you're in the interview process of the interns, or just kind of like watching them, what is some of like the key things that you're looking for in terms of like their personality, their demeanors, what they bring to the table, stuff like that?
The biggest thing I probably look for is just how do they go about approaching and working with athletes? And I've been pretty shocked at how many people look for internships or roles in athletics or working with athletes that weren't athletes themselves to some degree. And like, again, that can be bodybuilding, powerlifting, whatever. I don't even mean field sport athletes, but if you haven't personally trained for something yourself, I find that they struggle a little bit more to really understand what the kids are going through and how to connect with them and how to work with them in the weight room. And they just get so bundled by the way you're supposed to academically do things that it just makes it awkward in the weight room at first. So that's the first thing I notice and pick up on. It's definitely kids who have tried to be competitive, and again, like, usually they could have no experience coaching, but if they've at least been coached or been on a training program, they usually are more successful and pick it up quicker.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then as some of, like, circling back to some of your KPIs that you had, if you could name two that you could keep like now that you wish you would have had in your experience, like over the years, which ones would you pick and why?
Oh, that's a good one.
Because I understand it depends too, so I'll give you that bone. But
one that honestly, I feel like this is going to be a cop-out answer here. It's going to be keeping something that I started with, but just using like broad jump information. I love that because it can just tell you so many things. That's definitely one of those metrics that like we've seen. It's because you can use it early on. That's one of the reasons that I love it, and so that's probably one of those numbers or one of those testing metrics that I will use wherever I go. After that, I'd probably say your relative power is the best way I can put it. It's something newer that we've been able to look at with using our force plate technology and understanding how to apply it. It's just one of those that it really just gives you an idea of what you're looking at with an athlete. Like, are you really looking at a power athlete, or are you looking at just like a really strong, forceful athlete? And both of those they're very different. People are going to respond to very different training, and they're going to produce different things out on the field. So that relative power output is, I think, becoming more and more important than just the sole number itself.
Mm-hmm. And then last one, if you could go back in time to when you were coming up, like either at the high school or the college level, what would have you have changed differently in your own training in order to take yourself to the next level?
I would have taken consistency of training significantly more serious, and that's honestly probably the biggest thing that I'd say that I've learned too, just from working with everybody. If you're not consistent, it's just constantly fighting to dig yourself out of a hole. I was pretty fortunate. I had a really good track coach in high school, and I threw, and they had for a high school that was a school of 80 people. We had a really good, we were given a really good strength and conditioning program from them pretty much. And when I was with them, I was probably the strongest I ever was, best shape I was ever in. And then I hated running, and I'd never wanted to do any of it. So as soon as track was done, I wouldn't do it. And I'd have to dig myself out of the hole every year for back when I played basketball or whatever. So I just wish I was more consistent. And that's one of those things that I've noticed here. Our kids that are most consistent have the least issues, the least amount of injuries. They usually perform. They're at least available to perform more often than most. So, and that's the biggest thing we tell our kids too. Like, there's program times of the year is off. Take advantage of them. Don't go start working out the first 2 weeks after season because you're bored. Take those 2 weeks off, because when we start working out again, going to be working out a lot, and you need to do everything then for it to all work together. So,
yeah. There has to be an intent behind those next workouts.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I got.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, TJ. Enjoyed the conversation with you, man.
For having me.
Oh, of course. Excited to have another Yale guy up here. But we hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. We will see you guys next time.